All right, I want to welcome everybody to Facebook Live, Friday, November 1st. It's our first Friday in November here on Recovery Live. I'm broadcasting remotely today. I'm down in Winter Park, Florida, where we're just about ready to start the Leesburg retreat. It's the home retreat of Came to Believe Recovery. It's just so awesome. We're just so excited. This is the first week of our month of relationship, talk on relationships. And today our subject is mending relationships. And I'd like to welcome Danielle Fox to the show, who has agreed to join us. And Danielle's a licensed professional counselor, right? LPC.
I am. Yes.
And she's joining us from, where are you joining us from today, Danielle?
Total opposite of Florida. I am in New Jersey, and we are well into having the first frost. So we are approaching winter. So hope you're enjoying the sunny weather.
Wow, it's great to be down here. It's pouring rain here, but it's not cold. The day I left, Danielle, I think Lisa was texting me. It was 34 degrees there, or 35 degrees. So I got out just in time. And Lisa's our wizard behind the screen again today. She's joining us. Lisa will be monitoring our chat for us. If you have any questions for Danielle and I today, or Danielle and me, please put them in the chat. We're going to be talking about relationships. We're going to be talking about mending relationships today, from recovery and just in general in life and things that happen. And we're going to get a lot of input from Danielle, and we'd love some questions. Danielle will love to take questions, and myself, on relationships. Such a big thing just in life when we go through things, right? Mending a relationship. Just so exciting here, guys. Lisa, I know, is behind the scenes, and Danielle with us having retreat. You know, the whole thing that we do at Came to Believe Recovery is to pass this life-saving message of the 12 steps as the founders did it. And so everything we do is about presenting that message at our retreats and through the other means that we're developing. And this is so exciting for us as leaders this weekend to have. We have about 68 people showing up this weekend in Leesburg, of which about 40 of them are brand new. And I woke up this morning thinking, you know, how many people's lives are going to be changed today? They're going to come in and they're going to look all downtrodden and scared, and on Sunday they'll be happy, joyous faces. So it's really exciting for us to be ready to do this. I want to announce too that we're going to have our virtual retreat this year too. Anybody that's watching us, the virtual retreat is going to be January 7th through the 9th. So if you want to join that, the registration is open. So if you want to come and register for that, we would like that. And I'm going to make myself live here so I can start monitoring some of you guys that are they're doing this for us. Sue Foreman's on. We're going to see who's joined us here today. Ralph Bierman is on. We've got a lot of guests, and we'll announce them as we go. We've got some background feed. Close that, please. Thank you. Sorry about that. Anyway, today we're going to start to talk, once we get going here, we're going to talk about mending relationships. And when you see this as an overview, Danielle, when you've, in your experience in working as a licensed counselor, and what do you see as the main topics, main things that you see when people come in? I mean, these main kind of categories that you deal with when it comes to relationships.
Yeah. So, and thanks for having me. I don't think I got to say that before. So very excited to be here with you, and very excited to just know Came to Believe Recovery. I know the impact that it's made in so many people's lives. So I've known Tom for a while, so it's really great to see how this organization has grown and changed and just expanded into things that probably you never thought you were going to do before. So it's awesome to be here. So there's 4 different things that when I think about mending a relationship that come to mind. So 2 of them I think are topics that maybe prevent us from wanting to or even trying to mend a relationship. So those 2 categories are trust and fear. And we'll definitely get into those a little bit more in detail as we move on. But I think those can definitely be a hindrance to why sometimes we don't mend relationships, or why we fail at mending relationships. And then the other two topics I think are essential in really trying to mend a relationship, and that would be boundaries and communication. So those are two really key things that you need as far as trying to mend a relationship.
Thanks, Ida. I mean, that is so interesting. I know in my own life, it seems like it's the trust and the fear that have broken the relationship, that are the things that have been lost. And then it's the boundaries and the communication that help us as the rebuilding tools. Is that a fair estimate to say that?
Yes, I would definitely say so. And there's definitely some other things that go into it. But I think we can get overwhelmed sometimes with topics and with kind of categorizing things. So I think if we try to keep it simple and then sort of work on these main areas, it's a little bit more manageable and sounds a little bit easier in our minds to be able to work on these relationships.
All right, and we're going to get into this. We're going to take, I think that's enough. We can start with this, Danielle, and kind of go through each one of these one by one and talk about how they show up in different types of relationships too. Parent, children, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, friends, co-workers, anywhere where these kind of relationships, because we really are talking about that, guys, mending relationship in general as we, continue our walk just with people in the world and be able to conduct our lives. I want to say hi to a few more people. Doc Roth has joined us. Angela Gross is with us today. We have Terry Bruns is with us. She's actually here in Florida. She's coming to retreat this weekend. We're looking for Dale Barker, but actually Dale Barker, guys, the great, I didn't say it again. I can't say great Dale Barker. It's going to get me in so much trouble again. Dale Barker's actually here in the house where I am today. He'll be at the retreat with us this weekend. Thanks for you guys again. Melissa McManus from the UK. So the UK is on with us today. Dale Marsh was with us. So we have California. So Danielle, we get everybody from all over the world, really. So right now we have California with us. And guys, we love it when you put at least the state where you're from, so we know where our reach is.
So anybody from Tennessee? I was just visiting Tennessee for the first time a couple of weeks ago. Love the state. So that'd be cool if anybody was on from Tennessee. We
did have someone from Tennessee, I think, last week, Danielle.
Oh, nice.
And we get some Indiana people. We have some people we had somebody from Alaska.
Okay.
And then in the UK, the time zone thing is good. This time is in some cases best for the West Coast and the UK, because it's kind of after and before work, right? Where we're kind of at lunchtime here in the US.
So Tom, I have to ask, why would you get in trouble with saying Dale is here?
Well, if I call him the great Dale Barker, then his head gets big. He thinks that he's something special. So I got in a lot of trouble last week calling him the great Dale Barker, and he blew up the whole internet with Facebook posts about being that. So I'm sure he's smiling right now someplace. He's not on here. We'll see a comment from him for sure. Tim Seitz is with us. Franklin Salaga, he's a regular with us. It's great. Welcome everybody with us today on this conversation. Such an important conversation, with or without outside recovery. We certainly want to put a context on it within the recovery world, because we break so many relationships. But I think if we just get into this, Danielle, I think, and you could comment on this, what a broken relationship from trust, it could be from anything, and it could be from being somebody's an addict and suffering from substance use disorder, or just a broken trust from any kind of a breach of a confidence. Would that be a fair statement? Yes, and we're social beings, so everything in our lives has to do with people. We go to the grocery store, we go to the mall, we go to the movies, we go to a restaurant, we go to work, we have our family, we live with our family. So we're surrounded by people. Everything that we have to do in life has to do with relationships. So I think it's important to know the context of that, to know that these patterns of behaviors, whether they're with family, whether with friends, whether they're at work, we have to be able to kind of manage that and be able to know how to deal with all of these relationships. So I think with trust being broken, and I know came to believe, your key principle is, recovering from your brokenness. So I always have to remember that whether you're in a situation with somebody and you think it's their fault,
there's also blame on your own self, which I think sometimes is really hard. So when somebody wrongs you, you think automatically, you know what? They did that. It's their fault. I did nothing wrong. They really wronged me. But together, we're all broken. And I think that's an important part to realize and have some self-awareness about that. And that expectation that it's always going to be on the other person to fix it and not on yourself. So I think that that's, important. And one of the things with trust, you can't rebuild trust without forgiveness. So I feel like trust and forgiveness really go hand in hand. You can't move on in that relationship unless you learn to forgive that person and actually choose to forgive that person. Because I believe, spiritually and biblically, forgiveness is a choice, just like loving somebody is a choice. And I think that that's really hard sometimes, and it hurts and it's sad and it takes work. But we know in the end that that's what Jesus did for us, and that's what we need to do with other people.
Those are great points. I know for me, when it came out of recovery, Danielle, and I had to mend relationships, trust was broken with almost everybody that I had relationships. And it was because of, dishonesty mostly. And my integrity I held no integrity with anybody that I knew. So I go into this program, I go through these 12 steps, I have this character defect removed from me. I, undergo forgiveness, I think from God, from my new higher power. My relationship has forgiven me for all of this. We clean house, we get ready to go out and make amends. And we wonder why people won't trust us right away. And we go and say, but we said we're sorry. And why is trust not, even if there's forgiveness, there seems to be still they're watching everything you do.
Yes, they are watching because they've been hurt, and they're fearful. And I think that's, where fear comes into this, is that we don't know that the person who hurt us is going to change. We don't know if they're going to do the same thing over again. We don't know if they're going to hurt us again. And only time can really fix that, because a person needs to prove to another person that they're not going to do that again, or they're going to at least try or make a difference in their life to be able to win that trust back with a person. And that takes time. And I think part of the forgiveness area is that if you forgive somebody, it doesn't mean you're saying what they did was okay. And I think that's a really key point in forgiveness, because I think that prevents people from forgiving people sometimes. And that could be in situations like you were saying, where these other people maybe are not accepting you right away. They might have not forgiven you. But again, forgiveness is not saying that it's okay. It just means you're acknowledging what happened, and you're trying to move forward, you're trying to move past it, and you're giving that person another chance. But sometimes that doesn't come right away. So sometimes, even if the forgiveness comes, it doesn't mean that that person is going to be around you all of the time. It doesn't mean that the relationship is going to go back to what it was before. Because remember, on both sides, people are dealing with that emotionally. So you, as the person who were wronged, are dealing with the emotions on that side. And then the person you wronged is also dealing with the other side of those emotions. So together on each side, we're both dealing with those things. And that could take different amounts of time for both people. So time is really, sometimes it's on our side and sometimes it's not, because we might be on the other end of that, where we need to be the person that waits. You might have to wait for somebody to forgive and move on from situations.
I think it sounds to me, I know that one of the things that it's a second big category is fear. This person they've been hurt so bad, and maybe for years and years and years, which is very common in an addiction situation, at a parents and really close relationships. It's been so many years, and that this stuff can't go away. And it truly is. It has cost you so much in emotional distress that you're just afraid. You've heard this before. I'm okay now. I'm not going to do this now. So fear is something that, I, as the recovered addict, can't do anything about this person's fear except continue to do what I'm doing, right? I can just do my thing, but I can't manage how they release that fear. And I would think some sort of system of boundaries, would this be where boundaries come in, where they can somehow set up a wall of protection that doesn't make them so separate, but does allow them to trust again with a boundary.
Yes. Yes, I think you said that perfectly. The fear stops people from moving on. It actually, I think we just got a comment. It says, Dale Barker, unforgiveness blocks the sunlight of the spirit. That's awesome. Yeah, perfect way to say that. You really miss out on a lot when you're experiencing fear. You miss out on relationships, you miss out on experiences, you miss out on opportunities that you could be moving forward with things. I think also with fear, you're afraid to be rejected.
Right, right.
That's a big thing that comes in. So all of these things are going through your mind. So we talk about people and we talk about relationships, of how complicated it is. Now we break down to one situation with one person that may have hurt you, and this could totally consume you, where the fear comes into place as well. I think a lot goes through your mind when you're choosing to forgive somebody. The fear is telling you they're going to do it again, they're not going to change, it's never going to be like it was. So all of that is a block. All of that is preventing you from moving on. And we have to remember that you can't control the other person. You only control yourself. You control your reactions, your choices. And this is where the boundaries might come into place. So if you're experiencing fear from maybe a situation that has hurt you, and you're trying to forgive a person and trying to see, how are we going to move forward from this? This is where the healthy boundaries will come into place, because nobody's saying if you forgive somebody that you have to go 100% right back into that relationship and things just move on like it was. Nobody's saying that. You don't have to do that. It's actually, you need to be cautious. You need to kind of take a step back and put those boundaries up to decide. There is a chance sometimes when these situations happen in relationships, that you might not have that relationship anymore. And that's okay, because your emotional well-being is number one, your recovery, your physical, health, everything that needs to come first. So when you are in a situation and you might need to forgive somebody, and you can forgive them, and you might not have a relationship with anymore, as long as you're not holding on to bitterness and resentment, it's okay. I have a situation in my life where I had a situation with a family member that I forgave them. I pray for them. I don't have any ill will towards them, but it is not good for me to have a relationship with that person. So, and that's how I chose to move on. And I think that's hard for some people to understand. I think people think you have to forgive and then the relationship goes on as it was, which I don't agree with that. I think that you have to put the boundaries up and know what's right for you.
So I know in my life, I think it's really important to let people know too that it's okay to end some things. I know that I had some dysfunctional relationships when I was using. That once I got sober, there was hurt on both sides of it, and there was a resolution of it. But then in the end, there wasn't a place for that relationship anymore. It was dysfunctional anyway.
Right.
It was a relationship that was not healthy under any circumstance it had been in. And so it's really important to say it's okay if we move on after it.
Yes. As long as your heart is right, and your heart is right with God, and you've forgiven them, I think it's totally acceptable to not have a relationship with somebody that is going to be unhealthy for you.
And in our program, we say you have to go make amends, right? Even in the scriptures in our legacy guide, one of the scriptures we use making amends is, if you have something against your brother or brother against you, go make amends with them before you give your gift. So it's about being right with our fellow man. It doesn't mean, it means we have to be right and get it straight. And that doesn't mean we have to be friends with everybody. It's really important, because sometimes we burden ourselves. So do you think, and I kind of think I know the answer to this, but let's talk about this a little, because I think it's important that people will want to know. There's different levels of breaking trust and fear, especially in a husband and wife or boyfriend girlfriend relationship. That the lying, the cheating, the not coming home, the drinking is all breaking trust and breaching and lying. But things like infidelity, there are things that are a whole different level. And you can tell me if I'm wrong in how that trust goes, and how that fear, where it could be that, all right, you're not lying and drinking and cheating. That's easy to monitor, and okay, I'm good with that. But this infidelity, let's talk a little bit about how those different levels of broken trust play into this.
Yeah, that's a really good question and topic, because it is sometimes easy to forgive people. They didn't come home on time, or they said they were going to stop at the store and they didn't, or they lied about, something small. But then there's the things that are just hurt so deeply, like infidelity or stealing, lying, cheating, whatever it is. So this is going to take longer. I think when you experience something like infidelity, or something that you even consider that really breaks your trust, because it's on a spectrum. What I might feel breaks my trust might not be what somebody else breaks their trust. So, there is a spectrum of the levels of that. And this is just really where it takes time. And I think the person on the other end that has wronged you, or has been, has not been honest with you, I think that it takes longer on their part. They have to prove more, which, unfortunately, sometimes they don't get the chance to do that. So it really takes two people to mend the relationship. So the person who was wronged has to be open and has to communicate and has to put up healthy boundaries to give the other person a chance to, be forgiven and to hopefully, mend that relationship.
There's a lot of comments coming in, Danielle, about boundaries. People are
Yeah.
really resonating with the idea that boundaries are really important. And from the recovery community, I know from the codependent community, which I think we all are, especially as addicts, there's a level of codependency. One of their big things is making sure you can set healthy boundaries, and that does shield you from certain wrongs that, at healthy boundaries, again, so that you're still open to be in relationship, because we have to be have some vulnerability. We won't have relationship.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think with boundaries, sometimes people think, well, if I put a boundary up, I'm going to be considered I'm rude, or I'm difficult, or, whatever the negative connotation is with boundaries. But you have to remember, boundaries come out of love. So they are to protect you. They're separations that we need, whether it's mentally, emotionally, physically. The boundaries are there to keep us safe, and to keep us healthy. And as a person putting a boundary up, you want to feel valued and you want to feel respected, and you have a right to have that. So we should never feel bad for putting boundaries up if they're coming out of love and they're clear and they're to keep you safe. So for example, I have a family member who has struggled with addiction before. And I know there's certain times of the day where I can't talk to them, depending on what is going on. That certain times of the day, they might be deeper into their addiction than not. So I love them. I let them know that. And I just say, we can't talk on the phone right now. We need to do it, at another time tomorrow. I love you. I'll call you. But putting that up, because I know for me emotionally, it's hard for me to handle that. And I can't be in a spiral of a phone call, during, an active addiction. So boundaries are so important. And I think it takes practice. Some people are really good at putting boundaries up and some people are not. Some people, I'm sure you've experienced, come across a little strong when they're putting their boundary ups, and right away what is going on with them. There's other people that are maybe a little bit more timid about it. But again, they come out of love. They are there to keep you safe, on all different levels.
So I'll tell you guys, we have a great question from Sue Foreman, Danielle, we'll get to in a second, but let's talk about boundaries, because a minute we're at it. Just so you guys know, I've known Danielle for quite a while. We used to work together. And I have told other people this, and Danielle, it's almost frustrating, but it's also very impressive. The one person in my life that I know sets the best boundaries and keeps to them is Danielle. Aww. She has sets boundaries that are, she really knows how to do it. And it's really important because it protects you and it protects others. And when we get overwhelmed in life, I know when I do, it's, people pleasing, and is something that is terrible for boundaries, because people pleasing says, I'm going to let people walk all over me and I'm going to not have boundaries. And we worry about, of course, addicts worry about they're not going to like us if we don't set boundaries. Yeah. But they're so important. to be able to have boundaries, and then may hold people accountable. We really want to be. It's important to say, hey, that's my boundary, and that's it. And anybody that's pushing against it, maybe that's a red flag anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for saying that, Tom. That's a really nice compliment
And
to give me.
Lisa H is good at it too.
Oh.
She's also a counselor, classically trained. Maybe she's just good at it with me because she knows she bosses me around more than anything.
Well, that's funny, Tom, because I have to say you're one. I think some people in our lives, it's easy to set boundaries, and sometimes it's harder, but I think we have a really good relationship, and I feel like it's easy for me to communicate to you what I need, or how I want something, or how we communicate. So you're a good on the other end. You accept the boundaries very well. I think you're really open to that, especially in your, recovery journey. I think that's great.
Well,
Yeah.
I appreciate you saying that too, Danielle, because what we're talking about in the relationship that you and I have as friends is that it's a very healthy relationship. That is, a lot of it is because you're really healthy, just as you are, emotionally and mentally and everything. And I've gotten healthier as a result of actually working this program that we teach, that we're going to teach this weekend to a bunch of people, and trying to walk the talk. So I try to walk the talk, which is I want to be able to have a really healthy relationship with somebody. So that is, I'm glad that you notice it, as in my life when things have not gone well. Danielle has been my counselor.
Tom, and I've definitely seen your growth since I've known you, when we first met. I'm trying to think, what year was it? 2000, I think it's 2014. We've known each other since. I think that's when Lisa would know. That's when Lisa, full disclosure, Lisa used to be my boss when I, worked at Centenary College.
Now she's mine.
And now she's Tom. So yeah, our dynamic has switched a little bit. But yeah, I think it was 2014. I started working, and I remember, Tom, actually, you were away on retreat on the first week that I started working. And I remember everybody saying, oh, you'll meet Tom when he comes back, and didn't know anything about retreats, didn't know, but I think you were in like Utah, or
could have been. Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere not, more like West Coast. And I was like, what does he do? Or Montana, maybe. And I was like, what is this guy doing in Montana or Utah or whatever? And I thought maybe he was like this big outdoors guy, and then come to know him much better. Then I learned about Came to Believe and all of that. So we've come full circle here with that. I think there's a comment, Sue Foreman, where there is trust, it is easier to communicate boundaries. Yes, I mean, perfectly. Example with Tom, I trust you completely, and I think you would say the same for me. And I trust that you'll respect what I say if I put up a boundary, and you're not going to push that. So I think that's a really important point to think. And that's why sometimes it's easier to set boundaries with certain people. Levels of trust are a little bit different with people, especially if you've had some hurt in the past. Your trust might not get to 100%. It could be at 70%, 75%, and then you keep working on that. There's people in my life where I don't share certain things with. I trust them, but maybe I don't trust them, with certain aspects. So that's also a level that goes on with relationships, with boundaries. I think the trust is really important.
And for me, when somebody sets a boundary, because I was the people pleaser, to me, to be healthy enough to know that when you set a boundary with me, it's not because you don't like me or you don't want to see me or you don't, because that's where we go sometimes. Well, or I can't control you, right? It can certainly push out of someone's control, because a boundary definitely is that, a block. So it keeps you safe, but it's also a maturity for me to know that it doesn't have anything to do with that. It's just a healthy boundary. But that doesn't happen without good communication, because we have good communication. I've always had that, and that we're going to talk about in a minute, because I think there's where you develop it. I think communication. So let's go back a second though, because there's a great question. I'd love to hear your point. It was kind of what I had talked about the different types of fear based on their hurts. So the questions from Sue Foreman, it says, is there a direct relationship between some measure of bad hurt and how long it takes to heal a relationship?
I would say yes. And I think this also depends on how the person is emotionally. So somebody who's in an emotionally healthy place and experiences a bad hurt might be able to deal with that a little bit easier than somebody else who maybe is not in as an emotional healthy place. So I definitely think there's a direct relationship, because when we get hurt, a lot of times we compare that to a hurt we've had before. So, for instance, you grew up in a household that wasn't emotionally healthy. Maybe there was some abuse going on, and then something like that happens a little bit later, and it brings you right back to that point again. So,
Mm,
I think a lot of times when we get hurt, it's triggering us. We're comparing it to something else that has happened before. So now we have this layer that we kind of have to peel away, because we
mm.
might still be dealing with a past hurt. And then we have a new hurt that comes along that reminds us of the past hurt.
Mm.
And we might have not been over that past hurt. So I think there's definitely a correlation. So that's why I think it's so important to always really be working on ourselves and working on those emotional triggers that we have and situations that have hurt us. We always need to be growing and changing, and just spiritually, just relying, on the Lord for help and reading the word, and trying to use that and live by that, to be healed.
This is such a great conversation, Danielle. I want to just take a second and welcome some of our guests and take a look through our comment section.
Mhm.
We have Wentachi, Washington, state of Washington is with us now. I know we have Las Vegas, Nevada with us.
Cool.
Anna Branson is with us. Hi, Anna. She's a normal follower. Let's see who else is here. Shannon Peterson is here with us, a few of those. And today, guys, we're going to do continue what we did last week, which is where anybody that had an anniversary today, we're going to send you a shirt. So we'd love to see it in our comment section. If you have a recovery, a sober anniversary today, and you're in our audience, please let us know in the chat, and Lisa's going to send you a shirt. So we're going to deviate from our random viewer shirt today, and we're just going to send shirts to anybody that has a anniversary. So there it is. Lisa's putting it in. William Crowder, he was on before watching. It's so great to see all the people watching and listening, and we love to have all the participation. Again, we're going to be running to that retreat this weekend. I'm telling you guys, if you're in the Florida area, if you're in the Central Florida area and you're hurting, you're watching this first time and you say, oh my gosh, what can I do? Reach out to us, and there's still room at this retreat. We can have you up there this afternoon, and your life could be changed this weekend. Autumn McCullough, we're going to see her this weekend. She and her husband Forrest are coming down to help us with retreats, so it's going to be great. The gang's all here this week. It's really like old home week here, Danielle. Leesburg was the first place that any Came to Believe retreat was. Really, there was one location, but really it's the home retreat. So it's really special for everybody that comes, and people from around the country do want to come. They come to the Leesburg retreat,
Yeah. And how long ago was that? The first one
started in the 70s.
Wow.
So I think it's 50 years. So Sue Foreman's going to tell us how many there's been. She's watching if she can. This is me asking you, Sue, to tell us how many retreats have been at Leesburg. 50 years to a year, 100 plus retreats have been going on. So they've been going on. Now this is our first one, guys, back on ground though, since COVID.
Okay.
So we didn't do it in 2020 because of COVID. So they were in 2019. So this is the first one back online. So we're just, again, so excited for what's going on. And if you're interested to go on our website, we have more retreats. 2022 is going to be a great year. We're getting ready to schedule some in California, Danielle. These new partners that we have in California want to open retreats. Wisconsin again, Sean Higgins will be back next week. And we'll talk about Wisconsin, which is coming up at the beginning of the year, and then the virtual retreat. Let's talk a minute about, we've been talking a lot about, Danielle, about, I think, to me, what breaks the relationship? What are the causes? The trust is not good. Fear is a cause. And then, one of the tools we're going to use is trying to set boundaries. And I know we don't have time today to talk about like actually setting boundaries, examples of good boundaries, which would be,
That could be a whole nother
and if
hours
you're,
of doing that.
if you're willing to join us again, I think it'd be certainly worth you coming back and helping us, because we come out of addiction, and I know that our program says we're going to live steps 10, 11, and 12, which means we're going to grow in our understanding and our effectiveness as human beings. And part of that is learning how to do all this stuff that we've been stunted with for years. There's no tools to communicate, to set boundaries, no functional tools. And so, people come out and we come and go, okay, now what? Yes, we have our new manager and we have a spirit living in us in our relationship, but we still got to do stuff. So this would be great, I think, to keep going. But let's talk a little bit about communication, this whole category of communicating when it comes to relationships, and how important it is. And in your experience, Danielle, how bad are people at communicating when they come in with a broken relationship? And is that part of it? How big does that play?
Yeah. So, I mean, again, a spectrum on this. There are some really bad communicators, and then there's some really good communicators. I think depending on the household you grew up in, that's really a foundation for a lot of the communication. Not that you can't grow out of that, because there are people who definitely grow and learn and change and know like what they grew up with was not maybe a healthy way to communicate. So yeah, it's a spectrum. You see it all over. There's also people that are really good at communicating that might not be good at mending the relationship. So it's really, it's person to person. Every situation is different. But speaking of communication, I just want to go back to a point that you had said earlier, which ties into communication, but just about the boundaries. So before, when we were talking about setting boundaries with each other, you had said on your end, when somebody sets a boundary, you have to be careful not to go to that place in your mind of they don't like me, they're rejecting me, all of the negative self-talk that goes along with that. So in your recovery, have you felt that that was a really hard thing to kind of change your thinking about?
Totally.
Okay.
It was totally that way. And the better someone is at it, I mean, really, I would say, and I'm not just saying this, when you set boundaries with me, it absolutely stung. And this was a few years ago, because you would set some boundaries that nobody had set with me before. And they were I didn't a lot of times understand why you were setting them, because there was some reason, and you just set this boundary and that was it. And you always stuck to it, which really helped me grow. And I realized later, I mean, it was a little trial and error. I had to see that you set a boundary, but then came back and it didn't follow up with any behavior change. So yes, it was really hard. And actually, Danielle, unfortunately, I think some people that did set boundaries, it was because they weren't wanting to have a relationship. They were setting it.
Gotcha.
So then that reinforces it.
Right.
But then those are those relationships maybe that I was trying to drag along that didn't need to be dragged. So absolutely, I've had to have a hard time because, it's all about me. Right. Which it's not, but it is in our heads.
Yeah.
Which goes, I'll go back to communication. The same thing is I'm really good at telling you and getting me, but it's the listening that I had to really get it and hear what you're saying or whoever is saying. And these active listening techniques have, for me, played really important skills to develop.
And I think that really helps me, as you explain that, to understand. I have a friend, who's recovered, and we always talk about how her brain works differently than my brain. And I know you've mentioned this a lot. So we'll be talking about a situation and my reaction will be one thing. And then she'll say, I can't think that way. She said, that will send me into a spiral of negative self-talk, feeling rejected, feeling unloved. So it's really interesting to always share that, because if you're trying to mend a relationship, you might actually not know what that other person is dealing with. You might not even know that they're recovered, working on their recovery. So thinking that their brain is working differently than yours, and you think, I'm doing everything right. I'm setting the boundary. I'm forgiving them. I'm doing all of these things right, but they're not doing their part. So I think, that's where empathy comes in, where we really need to try to understand what that other person is going through. Because again, like my friend, we laugh about it. We just say her brain works differently than mine. That my pattern of thinking and how I deal with situation is not how her brain is going to go, which then leads us into communication, because she might react one way, whether it's a verbal communication or nonverbal communication, and maybe turn somebody off. She might react a certain way and kind of make the situation worse, where on me, on the other hand, I might react differently. So I think that all plays into the communication. The listening is really important. Active, not just hearing the words, but
Mm.
it in and processing that and trying to understand their point of view. So if you're really actively listening, you are trying to really understand where they're coming from and what the point is they're trying to communicate.
And clearly, and not hear things that aren't said. Because
Correct.
what do we, right? Our head says, when someone says to me, I can't meet you, I don't want to do this. They didn't say that you're stupid and you're fat and you're ugly and I hate you and they're your company. But we can, especially my brain, I'll go there quickly. And many people, when you don't know that, when you set that boundary, just like you're saying, you don't know that that's what they're hearing. And then all of a sudden there's something funny and you're like, what? All I did was say I can't
Yeah.
come.
Yeah. Yeah.
It meant that.
Mhm.
So being able to communicate, being able to hear what's being said and not hear what's not
Yeah.
being said,
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
ask questions.
Mhm.
And I'm not as good at this either. Still today, I think in some ways, I'm a people pleaser, and I should call sometimes someone and say, "Can I just talk to you for a minute?
Mhm.
When you said that to me, this is how it made me feel." And that's
Yeah.
really healthy thing to do, right?
Yes. Very healthy. And it's funny because I do talk about that with same friends who our brains work differently. And she says she really has to work on expressing what she feels and feeling that she's allowed to do that.
Very
So
important.
she wants to. So she'll say to me, how did you just say that to that person? Like, how did you just come out and be able to say that? Again, our brains work differently. Our personalities are different. It also happens to be the field that I'm in, where I've learned and, trained in counseling. So, certain things will come a little bit easier for me. But she wants to be able to say what she feels to somebody and not feel bad about it. So I think that active, you have to be active in learning. You have to want it. You have to want to communicate better. You have to want to be able to work on these relationships. It takes work. It's active. Just sitting and doing nothing isn't gonna bring you to that point. So yeah, so I think listening, hearing what they're saying, empathizing, putting yourself in their shoes, really trying to see what they're communicating. And then the asking questions is so important. If you need clarification on something, if you don't understand what they're saying, it comes along trust now, because you need to be able to trust them to be able to say that to them and be okay with saying, can we just talk about this a little bit more? But I say a lot of people have a lot of trouble with this. I think it's really hard. And it's something that we're always working on and continuing to work on. There's people in my life where I'm totally open. I can do it. I have no problems with it. And then there's some other people where it's a little bit harder for me. So we all struggle with it.
It's a great comment from Sue Foreman, and I resonate with this. Is remnants of trauma stop us from hearing the other? We need to protect ourselves, and not
Yes.
hearing is a great shield. Again, there's fear.
Yep.
Whatever we're living in fear as, because hurts have been so bad, and trust. So they trust and fear, these things just keep coming up.
Mhm.
And nobody's perfect at this, right, Danielle? I mean, we
Mhm.
shouldn't beat ourselves up either if we're growing. But the point is that, like we say in our program, progress, not perfection. But starting to recognize these things, starting to understand how they work in our lives and our relationships, is
Mhm.
the number one thing. That I have a trust issue, I have a fear issue, I got to work on my boundaries and my communication. If at
Mhm.
least we know this,
Mhm.
we're moving in the right direction.
Mhm. Yeah, and we have to be open. Yeah, we have to be open to working on it. Just like you say with the steps, you're continuing, working on the steps. So in all areas of our lives, we have to be active and working on it. And think about it. We all have these responsibilities. We have work, we have family, we might have school, we might have activities. And then you have these relationships on top of that. Like we have so many things that we have to balance. So you can kind of see where some people are like, you know what, I don't have time. I don't have time to work on it.
Mhm.
But that over time builds up. So if your relationships aren't good with family, they might not be good with friends, it's going to spill over into other areas of your lives as well, your work relationships, even going to the store. Have you ever seen anybody in the grocery line next to you that's sort of, freaking out about something? It's probably not about what's happening in the store at that moment. That's built up from, other situations in their lives. So it really does affect every area of our life.
What a great comment to end, Danielle, to kind of say, how does this spill out into everything? I mean, why do we want to mend relationships everywhere we go? Because it can hijack all these areas of our life. I know if I'm stressed about something, it flows on the poor girl at the checkout counter, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or the poor girl. I mean, that is so important. Or on somebody else who somebody treats you one way and the other person does the same thing. And you're treating people differently. Like, I didn't do that to you though.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've had relationships where I've had to deal with the fact that I was paying for someone else's trauma on them. And that's a whole subject.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it's really hard. I will share one more quick little comment on that. So I used to work at a restaurant. I might have told you this story before. And I took the order. I went over to get their drinks, and the person at the table followed me over as I was putting their drinks on the tray and said, "Cancel our order." And I was like, what? I mean, it was just a few minutes. I said, "What happened? Is everything okay?" And I worked at a restaurant that had a salad bar, and we used to have pumpernickel bread on the salad bar. So he got up while I was going to get the drinks and noticed there was no pumpernickel bread on the salad bar, rushed right over to get me and said, "We're leaving." And I said, "I can look for something in the kitchen for you. How can I make it better? What can we do?" He's like, "That's it. We're leaving." So the joke was, there's bigger problems in life than pumpernickel bread. So that gentleman wasn't really upset about the pumpernickel bread per se. I mean, he was upset in that moment, but there was other things underneath that where he decided to completely give up on having dinner, having a good time. He was with his wife and just left because of the bread. So you never know what's going on deep down inside of somebody where this spillover, and I like that word hijack, comes out, where that's it. His night was ruined because of the bread.
Wow.
But we know it was more than bread.
It was the straw that broke whatever.
That was it. Yeah, that was it. He couldn't handle one more thing. So there's a lot of times where we take and take and take and take, and then all of a sudden, we explode when we should have dealt with something, previous.
Wow, great point. So guys, we're coming near the end of the hour, and there's Facebook is prompting me, Danielle, it allows you to bring people on to the thing, and it just we have in the past entertained the idea of actually bringing viewers on while we're live. We're not going to do it today, but I think in the future we might do that when people are really interested and want to come on and join us in the conversation. Even if you want to tell us we don't know what we're talking about, we love that, because we want to entertain all sides of everything. We want to show that we're willing to have this conversation about being recovered, which is a big one, how quickly we can do the program, and then even methods of how we are dealing with life as we're moving forward. I want to really thank you for coming on today, Danielle. It was a great conversation. An hour is over. It feels like it was like 10 minutes.
I know.
I'm sure we're going to get a lot of feedback. We've had a ton of feedback, a ton of comments, Danielle. Lisa can tell us later how many, but just tons and tons and tons of comments and engagement because of this conversation. It's so important. We are in relationship month. So as we move forward, would you be willing to join us again on live?
Sure. Yes, I've had such a great time, and the hour did go so quickly. So I'm glad everybody was able to join and listen. So yeah, I'd love to come back again. And I think Sue wrote there's been 85 retreats from the original 85. Central Florida. Skip COVID time, and we're having our 85th retreat with the CFL team.
Perfect.
Awesome.
So I didn't see anybody put any of their, again, if you've had an anniversary, get your name in here so Lisa can send you a shirt. I'm looking through, I don't see any, but Lisa may have seen them, saw them. So we're off to retreat, guys. We're going to come to you live over the weekend. Keep an eye out when you see, oh, Anna has 42 months. Very good. We'll give it to you. We're going to come live this weekend. Please watch when you see Came to Believe is live. I'd love to do some quick live from the retreats over the weekend. So, and show you the progress. We're excited again for what's happening. Go on our website, go on our Facebook page, check us out on YouTube. Trying to do the fancy Sean Higgins close. Again, thank you, Danielle, for being with us. Have a great weekend, everybody. And we will see you all again on Recovery Live next Friday, 9 o'clock Pacific, noon Eastern, and 5 o'clock in the UK. Join us here on Recovery Live, where we talk about everything recovery. Have a great day, guys.